Hey, if you own the Minelab X-Terra Elite, you're going to want to watch this video. I'm going to give you guys some pro tips today. Some things you could do to take this machine to the ultimate level, to get the most out of this machine that you possibly can. I have an old saying, it's 99% luck and 99% skill. You got to get the skill down on this thing, and I'm going to show you guys today the way that a professional metal detectorist would approach this machine. Here's some really good tips for you. Check this out. All right, my first pro tip is coil size. You're going to want to have the appropriate coil for the correct situation. Now today here I'm looking for iron out in an old early California gold rush mining camp, and I'm trying to find a bunch of good stuff hiding in with a bunch of nails. So I need this small coil right here to get in and listen in between all the nails and pick out the coins and the buttons and the really cool stuff that's hiding in the iron. So first pro tip is make sure you have the correct size coil. If you're going to be in a park that's real trashy, you're trying to hear coins hiding in all the trash, or you're trying to find, like me, relics in and amongst a bunch of iron, you're going to want to get a small coil. The small coil is a huge difference because when you have a couple different nails and you have a coin in the middle, this small coil can get in there and hear the coin in the center between the two nails. The bigger the coil, the more nails you hear with the coin. Therefore, the machine could be tricked by the nails, blank the nails out, and inadvertently be blanking out your coin. So get yourself a small coil, number one. All right, my next pro tip is to get yourself some headphones and use them. These are wireless headphones. These are the Minelab ML85 wireless headphones. They connect wirelessly to the X-Terra Elite. You're going to want to have these turned up so that you can hear them nice and loud, and it just gives you more detail in the sound profile. So when you're swinging along and you're listening to all those beeps, how do you know which beeps to reinvestigate or what signals to even dig? I get asked this question all the time on my YouTube channel. People say, how do you know when you hear all those beeps, which ones to dig? And it really does help to have headphones on so you can hear the details and the sound. Where I'm at today, I have an airport right next to me. I have planes flying over every couple minutes. There's birds out here, all kinds of environmental noise, traffic, everything else. So with the headphones, I hear just the signals, and that's something that is advantageous for you. It's a pro tip. Now there is the other side of that, you know, like if it's rattlesnake season and you want to keep one ear on and one ear off so you can hear rattlesnakes, or you're hunting with a buddy or a partner and you want to be able to hear them, sometimes you could pull one ear back, but headphones are important. Get yourself some headphones. All right, let's take a look at a few settings before we even start the startup procedure itself. These are important settings you have to have squared away before you really take off and start detecting. So, all right, we turn the machine on. Let's check this button right here and we'll toggle along. Right now we're in Park 1, Park 2, Field 1, Field 2, Beach 1, Beach 2. We're going to be in Field 2 today. That's where I want to be. That's a certain range of frequencies that are going to go into the ground that are ideal for small little pieces of gold and foil and things like that that are typically smaller items. I like to use these settings right here when I'm out in the early California gold rush mining camps from the 1850s because they have like thin little buttons and you just never know. But this is a really good setting for me where I'm at. But you may be in a park looking for coins, deep coins, or you could be at the beach in the dry sand. So make sure you're in the correct mode before we even get started. Secondly, this button right down here, click this and make sure that you have it in multi-frequency. You don't want to be in this one, you want to be in multi-frequency because that gives you the frequencies that are powerful in that range. So make sure you have that on and you don't see 15 there. And next we're going to hit this cogwheel button and we're going to go to the third icon over on the bottom down here. That's volume. Make sure your volume's turned up. All right, our next setting, again, cogwheel, toggle over to the fourth icon, and this is threshold. Let's hold that down, the plus button, until we get up so you can hear the threshold. You can hear that right now. I'm going to leave that at 12, and you're going to want to leave your threshold on. That's a pro tip, because when the threshold is there, you know the machine's on, everything's working okay, but when the threshold goes away, and we'll see this later as we swing, it's telling you that the machine just went over something that it discriminated, which could be a piece of iron, and that way you know you're in the iron when you hear the threshold breaking. And that tells you should probably stay in the iron because that's where all the good stuff could be hiding. So have your threshold on. I'm going to turn it up a little bit more today because I'm not going to be wearing headphones for this video. I'll probably run it right there. All right, let's also hit the cogwheel one more time over to this. AT is all tones. I want you to scroll over to all tones. So you might see the DP, or you might see 1, 2, or 5, but go to AT, we're gonna run it in all tones. That's a pretty powerful feature on this machine, and I recommend as a professional tip to you that you run it in all tones. That means that a nickel sounds different than a quarter, and a dime sounds different than a quarter. Each coin sounds slightly different, and that's advantageous to you. And then we'll hit this one more time out to the end over here. We're gonna run this at 3. That's as high as it goes. This is our recovery speed. This tells the machine that you want the machine to work very hard to listen to each individual target, and speed is the priority, that you're asking the processor to be very fast and speed so that it hears each individual target quickly, as opposed to running this down around 1, where you're telling now the processor inside that depth is more important than speed of detection. So today, because we're going to be in some iron, hopefully, we're going to run this up at 3. But we got to keep an eye on that. A pro tip is to watch this. If you're not in heavy iron, you don't have a lot of signals going on or a lot of trash in a park, don't be at 3, back off to 2 or even 1. But when you get in the really heavy stuff, go ahead and crank this up to max recovery speed at 3. That's a professional tip. All right, when you first turn the machine on, you're gonna see over here, this bar is your sensitivity. You can turn it down right now, or you can turn it up. You're gonna wanna run your sensitivity as high as you can. Now, 25 on this machine is crazy. It's a lot of sensitivity. I think I've found that a sweet spot for me is like 19. Somewhere between 17 and 21 is my range that I can work in out here. I'm gonna go ahead and be at 20 today and see how it does. If it feels stable at 20, I'll keep it at 20. But you may find in some really stable ground that you can run it up higher. And just gotta make sure it's not whining and crying and that it sounds nice and stable, but run it as high as you can, because that is equivalent to depth. Depth of detection is tied to how sensitive the machine is. So try to have that set optimally. And again, this is something you want to have done before you even do your startup procedure. And we'll talk about that in just a second. And we're about ready to get started here. Let's go ahead and click this button here to get started. And the first thing we're going to do now is start the startup procedure. On the icons here, Minelab laid the machine out really good as far as the way the icons go. The first thing is going to be our noise cancel. We're going to run this up waist height, hold it at waist height, and we're going to hold this button in right here. Keep it held in. It says -7, 9. Keep it held in. Okay, 9. I saw 9 twice. If you see the same number twice, you can let go. And now it's chosen a channel to operate on that's free of, not free, but has the least amount of interference from EMI or other machines near you, wires overhead, anything like that. So it's chosen a frequency to be in, an operating frequency to be in, and that's the channel that it ran is 9. So the next thing, you click this again, and now we're gonna do a ground grab or a ground balance. Switch hands here. The way we do that is you find a piece of ground where there's no signals, like right here. I got no signals down here. And we're gonna hold this button in and pump the coil. And look at that number. It's settled at 35. But look at that soil, just blood red, just loaded with iron oxides. And that's why we just got a ground balance of 35. Is so much iron in our soil out here. So that's our ground balance, that's done now. Then the last thing to do is just click this button and we're off and detecting, ready to go. Okay, so the reason that we did those settings before we went into the startup procedure, let's talk about that just for a second. So the first icon down below and the first thing in your startup procedure is to do a noise cancel. It's in your owner's manual. But if you had sensitivity set at 1, the minimum setting, imagine that the machine would probably have trouble hearing a lot of frequencies in the area because it's only set to a sensitivity of 1, the lowest setting there is. However, on the flip side, if you had the sensitivity turned all the way up, it would hear more EMI. So it's better at detecting EMI with a higher sensitivity. And you want to have your sensitivity at where you're going to run it anyway when you do that first step in the startup procedure. And the same thing goes for ground balance. Again, if you did ground grab or ground balance With a sensitivity of 1, it's barely even here in the ground. But if you have the sensitivity up high where you're going to be running it, you get a whole different ground balance. So that's why those things need to be done. Another example of why we look at settings first before we do the startup procedure is with multi-frequency versus single frequency. If you had a single frequency selected of just 15 kilohertz and you did all the startup procedure and you changed over to multi-frequency, you would have to stop and redo a whole new noise cancel and ground balance every time you change frequencies. So you might as well have it in the correct setting before you even get started. So that's why you kind of look at all these settings to make sure they're ready to go before you do your startup procedure. And this is what I recommend. This is a professional tip. So for today, because I'm out looking for iron, I'm gonna run this machine wide open. This horseshoe down here changes the way that the machine is discriminating. If you hit this horseshoe and you see all black, that means it's letting in all signals, including little bits of iron. If you have some discrimination set up, when you turn this horseshoe on, it will blank out areas, like this will blank out all the low little bits of iron, but I want to hear those today. I want to get zeroed in. I want to be able to find and hear the iron. So I'm going to leave the horseshoe open for me today, but that's a lot of extra noise that some people may not be used to or able to handle. But for me, I like hearing where the iron is, so I'm going to run it right there where it's wide open and hears every little thing. But for you, you may have to experiment and try both ways. I'm gonna take a break just for a second. I just started swinging and I noticed that my iron is really quiet. I can hear the iron because I have the horseshoe open up here, but I could barely hear it. I wanna turn my iron up, so I'm gonna show you how to do that. We're gonna hit the cogwheel, and when you get to volume, we'll hold that in, hold the cogwheel in, and that'll give us this setting where we can change the volume of the iron. I'm gonna run mine up a little bit higher so I can hear the iron a little bit better. So there we go. All right, so I just started swinging here, and I got a signal. Let's see what we got. So look at my screen there. You see the numbers? There's a bit of a range. 28, 27, up to 30, 32, 33. Let's turn 90 degrees and check that again. And it goes away. You notice that? Let's go back. So a couple things going on here. We have a big range of numbers, and we also have, it goes away on a 90 degree. Typically, this is junk, iron, and you don't want to dig this. You're going to have to probably dig some of these so you can see for yourself that this is something that you want to ignore and not dig. And how, you know, and it also could be a coin on edge or just in a weird angle. You just never know. So you're going to have to dig and learn as you go, but a pro tip for me is I'm not going to dig that, because I know after all of my thousands of hours of detecting, I don't like the sound of this when I turn sideways. It's just not for me. It's a signal I'm not going to dig. Like I said, you may have to dig a lot of these to get to the point where you'll feel comfortable walking away from this signal, but I'm going to walk away because the numbers vary too much, and it also is blank on a 90 degree turn. And you do hear a little bit of an iron grunt in there with it. Hear that? So let's keep looking and we'll see if we can find one that we will dig. All right, we got a signal down here. Right here. So we got a pretty small range of numbers. Look at my swing pattern down there. See how tight that is? I'm not going like this. Look at look at this. That's a pro tip right there, being able to get that little wiggle down, that swing right there. Look, you don't want the big wide swing. You want to get in and on it like this. Let's turn 90. Look on the screen over here too, and you'll see how deep it is. It's saying it's about 6 inches down. Numbers are very good. When I turn 90, it sounds good. Let's go ahead and pinpoint that and dig it. But see that little swing pattern? Work on that. Now, one thing I'm going to talk about here also that's another pro tip is, you notice that I didn't even pinpoint this. You could, by hitting this button right here, and you could pinpoint right on it. But I don't need to because I have a small coil and I have a small swing. There's no need for me to take the time to pinpoint that because I know it's right there. So I don't have to turn pinpoint on. So there's another pro tip for you just to help you get more time digging and swinging and not having to pinpoint. All right, let's go ahead and get down on this and see what we got. All right, time for another pro tip here. Make sure you have yourself a pinpointer. Pinpointers are important because now I can get down here with this pinpointer and try to figure out exactly where this item is in the ground that I'm going to dig. And I can feel it vibrating in my hand right here. And I do feel it's a little bit deeper. It's small and deep, and it's right there, straight down. So now, by me knowing where to dig, I'm less likely to ruin the object by sticking my spade into it and scratching it, damaging it, or whatever. And I also kind of know where to dig without making a giant hole, an unnecessary hole. Just a small little hole is all I need. Let's see if it's out. It is out. It's over here. And here it is right here. So it's a shotgun shell. And it was down about 3 inches. So, all right, let's keep looking. All right, one more pro tip here. When you're all done, cover your hole up and also recheck the hole. Swing over it one more time just to make sure there's not something else down there that you missed, or maybe there's two things. So cover your hole up like this. Take the time just to kick the dirt back in or whatever you got to do so there's no hole, and recheck the hole. And then we're off swinging again. Time to talk about swing speed a little bit here. This is a good swing speed right here. This would be too fast, and this would be too slow. So you want something that's just about like this right here. This is a good swing speed right here. Swing speed's important. Too fast, you're going to miss things. Too slow, you're going to miss things. There's an ideal swing speed, trust me. And it also is kind of tied to your recovery speed. If you have a recovery speed up, like we do right now at 3, this is a good swing speed. If you turn this recovery speed down, you may have to adjust your swing speed accordingly. So keep that in mind. Now the coverage of the swing. Notice that my coil is perfectly flat on the ground. I don't have my coil tilted in some weird way like this. Look at the coil tilt on that. That's bad technique. You want your coil flat to the ground. I'm always constantly looking and adjusting so that I have a nice flat coil. I want that perfect angle. There it is right there. And then I also keep the coil down on the ground. Look at this. I can hear the grass as I'm going along. You want to be down because if you're up here swinging, you're just losing depth. Especially with the small coil, you're already kind of losing depth anyway with the small coil, so you're going to want to have your small coil on the ground as you're swinging. There's a coil protector, a skid plate on the bottom of the coil to protect it, so don't worry about that, and that's a replaceable part that's very affordable. It's designed to scrape the dirt, the rocks, and the grass. So this is a good swing speed, a good swing technique. And this is what you want to do. Some iron right here, you hear that? Now if we had the horseshoe on, you're not going to hear that. But you do hear the threshold cutting out. Hear that? Some iron down here. You hear all that iron, the grunts? But no good repeatable signals. The numbers are all over the place. I'm getting the iron grunt. I'm going to pass that up. So there's a consistent number. Turn 90 on it, still there. We'll go ahead and dig that and see what that is. That's a low number. It's a pretty low conductor. Let's take a look and see what that is. Okay, so it's right here, right under my pinpointer. I know right where to dig without making a giant hole. It should be in this stuff right here, and there it is right there. Some flat iron. It's exciting because that could be like a food can from one of the miners. You can see these rocks have been here for a long time. Look at the lichen on these rocks. That's hundreds of years of lichen growth on these rocks. So maybe there was a mining camp nearby and this is a piece of their food can. I'm gonna go ahead and carry the trash out, put it in my trash pouch here. There we go. And then I'll bury my hole back up. And what do I have to do after I bury the hole back up? You remember? Yeah, I got to recheck it. Make sure there's not something else in there. And there very well could be with a piece of food can. There could be a lot of the canned parts down there. And there is. You hear that? There's more down there. All right, let's get after it. I got a signal here. Look at the swing. See the little swing? Numbers. 48 down to 44. Let's turn 90 degrees and check it again. Numbers changed a little bit. It's not the best sounding signal, but I'm going to dig it anyway. See what it is. It's right here. It's a little bigger, something a little bigger. You can tell with the pinpointer because it feels like a pinpointer to kind of a wide area. And there it is. Another shotgun shell. Okay. All right, so I got a spot here where we finally got into some iron down here by this little creek. And there's a lot of iron near me here. Let's listen. Hear all those little grunts and a lot of iron. So a pro tip is if you're in this kind of stuff where it's real noisy, there's a lot of sounds, signals, and iron. You're just listening for the little squeaks or something that sounds different than that low bump 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 grunt. Anything different like that. Turn 90. There's a little something right there. Let's see what that is. I'm kind of hiding over here in the iron. Pinpoint it. But just something that's kind of repeats, that's hiding in the middle of all the grunts. Maybe it's a high conductor sound. You hope anyway, right? Because that could be a coin. There it is right there. Just a little piece of iron hiding in that it liked the sound of. There's more of it down here. And you could see that, I'll show you in a second here. I'm right in the middle of a dump. See this food can here? Which is kind of a modern food can, by the way. Not gold rush period. So, but see all the other iron over here? Look. And that's just modern dump stuff. And that food can was right here. You can see over here you got barrel bands down there. The bands that go around barrels. All right, let's keep looking. I'm gonna stop for a second just so you can hear this. You hear all that? That's EMI. Got some power lines over here, and I'm not really sure what it's coming from, but that's called EMI. So let's get the machine up, hold it at belt height, and do a new noise cancel. I go into the first one here. 3, 1, 9, 9. Interesting, because I think we were on 9, so let's see. Could just be a signal, but look at all the thin iron down here. Do you see all these can parts down below me here? It's just right in the mix of a trash site. See all that? It's just impossible to detect in this stuff. This is all can parts. Let's try to get on the fringe of this and see if we hear anything, because this is maddening. Look at this. All right, let's try a little different spot maybe. We'll work our way up into this flat up here and see what happens. Maybe over that way. Look at over there. It looks pretty good, right? Let's go check that. Got a signal here. Let's take a look. See that swing? 30, 32. Let's turn 90 degrees. Number goes up a little bit. Let's go ahead and pop that out and see what it is. It's got a little variation in the numbers. It usually means that it's just a different shape, maybe. Sometimes a perfectly round thing can give you a really solid number in both directions. But this one's kind of jumping around a little bit. Gave a couple different numbers in different directions. Could just be something laying sideways in the ground or just a different shape. Let's take a look. It's out. And there it is. That is a different shape. It's a broken shell casing, and just gave a different sound in the orientation it was in the ground. Well, we never really did get it into the iron out here. I thought that we'd stumble onto something. Spent a couple hours kind of swinging around out here and just not much to swing over. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way back to the vehicle, but I'm going to change my recovery speed down to 1 because there's just not a lot of signals out here. And I'll keep an eye on it. If I start getting into some signals or some iron pops up, I'll adjust it back up to 2 or 3, but I'm going to lower the recovery speed because there's just nothing out here. So I'm hoping that it'll hear something a little bit deeper, just a kind of a drop out here. You never know. But let's work our way back to the truck. Some of my best things were found on the way back to the truck. So keep my fingers crossed and check back in if we get another signal. All right, here we go. All right, that's going to wrap up the video here. As far as adventure, it wasn't much of an adventure, but this is not really about adventure. This is about talking about pro tips for the X-Terra Elite. And what do I mean by pro tips? I just assume that you're probably new to the machine or new to metal detecting in general, or you just want to get a little bit of an edge. You have this machine and you just want to find out what all the extras are, the things that might make a difference. And that's really all this video is about, is to tell you my professional tips. Professional meaning somebody who has spent thousands and thousands of hours metal detecting for 38 plus years. And on this machine, I'll be honest with you, I don't have any more than a couple hundred hours on it, but it's so similar to other machines that I have many thousands of hours on that they're all very similar. And I am a Minelab Detexpert, which means that I've been recognized by the company as being an expert on their product line, including this machine. And today was just, like I said, just a bunch of tips that you can do to get the most out of it. And I'll go back to what I said in the very beginning of the video. It's 99% luck, this hobby, 99% luck and 99% skill. And that's really the only way you can look at it. I've had some incredible luck, but skill is important. And to make sure you have your machine set up ideally and that your techniques are ideal, and you'll be off and running and you'll do very well with this machine. This is not a machine that's going to end up in your closet or in the garage and just get shelved. Just the fact that you watch this video right here and you're willing to learn these extra steps right here to get the most out of it tells me that you'll do very well with it. So Having said that, thanks for watching the video. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.